Hello and welcome back to my channel. Mireille Nicole here, your relationship coach. And today I just want to share with you a clip from a live Q&A call I did in my Happily Ever After Bootcamp. And I think this is a really important topic that came up, and there's a really good question that came up in there. So I wanted to share this with you. And essentially what we're talking about is, what do you do when your man, your husband, the person you're dating is grumpy or in a bad mood or sad or maybe even depressed, right? So this is something a little bit longer term in terms of his mood. What can you do to support this person? Obviously, like I share in the video, it's his problem first and foremost, but when you love someone, it's hard to just watch them and not be sure what to do. So I'm going to share with you two very powerful ways you can support your man when he's maybe sad, depressed, going through tough times. And I really hope you enjoy this video. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like it. If you have any questions or comment about what I shared, make sure to leave them in the comments below. Here we go. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is, what do you do if your man is sad or depressed or just moody in general, right? How do you influence or navigate the vibe when it comes to that? And this is funny because this actually, like I said, this is something that came up with a woman in the group earlier on. And it also came up yesterday. A girlfriend came over for supper and we were just chatting about stuff and catching up on life. And she's been in a relationship now for a long time with this man. And she was just talking about how lately, even though with the pandemic and everything and them both working from home, they are like always together, but it feels like they're not, right? Like they live in this pretty big house and, they're under the same roof, but they still don't see each other. And, they're not spending that quality time together. It's like they're not even together, even though they physically are, like, you know what I mean? And so she was sharing with me how she talked to him and she asked, what was going on. And he admitted that, he's just like in a funk right now and he'll get out of it. And honestly, like when she was telling me that, it didn't seem like it was reassuring her much, right? Like she had tried talking to him about it and just, she wasn't sure what to do. And honestly, I totally get that. I don't know if I've mentioned this before or if you're into like astrology and stuff like that, but my man's like a Scorpio. Like he's totally moody. He's like the mysterious, brooding, moody man. And I love him for it. Like I've shared this before where I am obsessed. Like my favorite movie or series is the BBC version of Pride and Prejudice. And like I had this vision of having my Mr. Darcy one day. And like in that movie, you can see that he's like moody and grumpy sometimes, or like just like totally mysterious. So I got my Mr. Darcy, and that comes with a whole bunch of qualities, but also a whole bunch of challenges when it comes to like managing his emotions, which I love, right? But it's something that really resonates with me. So I really wanted to share this. And first of all, the first thing I'll say is that that's his problem, right? Like I'm not suggesting in this this conversation we're going to have and the tools I'm going to share that you start taking his mood personally or blaming yourself. However, I do realize, and I know from personal experience, that this can impact your mood and energy, right? Like it's one thing to say that, okay, it's his problem, but like if you're living in the same house with him or you guys are doing stuff together, like misery loves company. There's truth to that. It can be, depending on the level of work we've done on ourselves, obviously, or even just in our mood that day, it can affect us, right? I totally get that. And so this is going to be about being, what I want to share is more about being like a supportive partner, because you can't change him. Like he's a moody guy. That's maybe what you got, right? Like in my case, that's what I got. I got the moody man that I wanted. And but however, there are things you can do. And yes, sometimes the answer is going to be, just to give him space and, you'll have to let him deal with it himself. But when you love someone, like it can be really difficult to just watch him be like that, right? I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll let him go in his cave and do what he wants. But sometimes if it's lasting a while or depending on the situation, like I love the man. I want to do something to help him and to support him. The difference is, I come at it from the mindset of I'm here to support him, right? I'm not here to fix him, solve his problem, or trying to change his mood. Like, I'm not the one who's going to be responsible for that. But as a loving wife in my case, there are things that I can do to support him. And so the number one thing I want to share with you, or the first thing I want to share with you when it comes to that, is in terms of supporting, how you can support him is in helping him raise his serotonin, right? So like, serotonin is your feel-good brain chemical. It's what helps regulate your mood. And of course, I'm getting like this is like biology stuff, right? Like, but at the same time, even though it's like more complex than what I'm going to say, there are things that you can help support your man when it comes to help elevating his serotonin. So ask yourself, what are things that I can do to help raise serotonin levels? And you raise, one of the ways, there are many ways, through food, through, other more mindset things you can do, even exercise. There are things you can do to help raise your feel-good brain chemicals, your serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, etc. But when it comes to serotonin, one of the things that you can do, or what raises serotonin production, is when we feel significant or important, right? That raises serotonin production, it increases, and then we feel good. So how can you contribute to making your man feel significant or important? And we talked a little bit about that in the training on praising him, right? Like recognizing things that he does and he's achieved is going to make him feel like important and like what he's valuable. So doing things like that are a great way to help raise his serotonin levels as being a supportive partner, right? And even just an example of this. So something I like doing, because this actually came up with my husband the other day, last weekend, anyways, a few days ago. This is still fresh, right? So my husband was feeling very, stressed, overwhelmed, kind of unsure at work. So what I like doing, and what I did in that situation, is I looked at him, right? And I said, babe, you're smart. You save their butts at work all the time, and you work hard, right? They're lucky to have you, and you got this. And just something like that, right? Then usually I just leave it at that. Of course, it's genuine, always making it genuine, but just reminding him like who the F he is, right? Sometimes we all need that, and your man's no different. And the more you do that for him, the more chances are he'll reciprocate too, right? But just a powerful way to help raise the serotonin level is going to be to, one, help him, remind him of who he is, support him, remind him that he's valuable. And you can just say that to him every now and then, right? When I see that he's sad about something, I'm not going to try to fix the situation or whatnot. That's the man's job. That's another training that we're going to talk about. But I will remind him like who he is and, his potential and his value. Because a lot of times, obviously, and you can probably relate that to yourself, we forget in those moments, right? When things are tough, when we're stressed out or whatnot. So number one, that's a way to raise his serotonin level. And another way also to help your man get out of a funk, if things are, not going so well for him, he's stressed, he's been in situations where people are giving him a hard time or whatnot, or things are really difficult. Another thing you always want to make sure of is to just always be on his side. So this is another concept that's been shared with relationship experts, right? Be on your partner's side. Be careful not to fall in the trap of, and kind of justifying maybe the other person or saying, oh, well, maybe you should have tried that again, trying to fix the problem. Avoid that space as much as you can, right? You want to be on his side. And think of it, a lot of times too, when you're sharing things with your man, you just want him to validate you. You just want him to be on your side. So notice, if you notice he's having a hard time with a work situation, maybe with his ex-wife. I know that's something we relate to in our situation, right? Having both come from other relationships, we have to deal with all this co-parenting difficulty and agreements and whatnot, or maybe he's having a hard time with the kids. The kids are back in school. It's still kind of stressful times. The kids, might be having a hard time, and this could be reflected on how you feel and your mood and his mood, right, in the relationship. So always be on his side about it and resist that urge to fix it, all right? In fact, you want to support him and figuring it out himself, right? Ideally, and this is what we're going to talk about in a future training, is you want to support him, encourage him, really lead him back to having him figuring out for himself. And again, that is going to foster this feeling of achievement in him and raise those serotonin levels. So I see I have a question. So there was one more thing. Yes, Mr. Darcy, come on, Mr. Darcy. We've got to love Mr. Darcy. Yes, I've gotten better at giving praise and notice a difference. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm so happy to hear this stuff. How do you navigate being on his side in cases where you think the other party might be slightly right? You gotta be on his side. You gotta be on his side for those. So one of the things I'll say for like, even if you, one of the things you could do, right? Like obviously you love the person, you don't want to see them make the same mistake again. So I feel like a lot of times, I know for myself, when I've been in situations where maybe I've made him felt like I wasn't on his side, is because that, all right, I want him to avoid making that mistake again, or I can see that, oh, maybe if you had played that a little bit differently, that person was kind of right. So I would just ask questions, right? In that case. So I would, in that situation, you want to be on his side, but also what you can do is you can kind of ask more questions to dig deeper into what happened and to make him reflect on the situation a little bit more so that he can kind of guide himself out of it, so that he can hopefully, right? I'm not guaranteeing this is going to work, but I feel your best bet, if it doesn't feel comfortable for you to just say, oh, you're right, babe, or be on his side. Like if you kind of, feel wonky about that because just in your own integrity, you're kind of like, oh, maybe there was something there with the other person. Still, what you can do without not being on his side and, making him feel maybe shame or guilt for doing that is to dig deeper with questions. And then hopefully he comes to that realization on his own. And if he doesn't, again, it's, he needs to figure it out for himself, and he needs to see it. But the more questions you can ask to get him to self-reflect, and then maybe even just, reflect it back to him, or just repeat what he's saying, maybe when, he says something, you're like, okay, obviously you should have seen it. Just repeat it. That's going to be the best you can do. All right. And then, so I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense for that. Sorry, Steph, I started reading the other comment, but hopefully that works. So I would give that, again, when you ask the questions, be careful not to interrogate them too much or, make it obvious that you're on the other person's side, but it's more from a place of curiosity. So do it just casually, like, tell me more about that. Why do you think why do you think this person was doing that or reacted that way? I don't know the situation, so I can't ask those, give you the precise questions, but I know it's in you, right? Think about what I just said. Think about how it relates to your situation, and it'll come to you. I trust you're doing the work. It's going to come to you. Jermaine, he totally remembers when he let his moods affect you. Yeah. And I did a whole video on that one time because I was very guilty of that. I would always take on other people's emotions, and I would call myself, I would still call myself an empath, but I realized that I was taking the empath definition way too far, to the point where I was letting things happen to me. I was letting other people's moods affect me. And then I was hiding behind this empath label. And when I discovered that I was a bit past empath and I was being a bit codependent with other people's emotions as taking them on, that was such a huge difference. And I know you do this kind of work, Jermaine, too, so you can maybe relate, or that might bring up some thoughts at your end. But the more, we can kind of detach from other people's moods, but also you can detach and also show care, right? And show support too. We just don't want to take them on, but we can show that we care about the other person by supporting him in some of the things I've shared in this video. Oh, good. Steph, I'm glad this makes sense. And give it a try. Keep us posted. Let us know how that works. And I just wanted to share one last thing before I hop off as an example to what I talked about today. So I don't know if you've watched the movie Jerry Maguire. It's a pretty famous movie, right? Older movie now at this point. I'm calling ourselves old, but anyways, if you go search that on YouTube, I encourage you to go search in YouTube a specific clip of that movie, Jerry Maguire, okay? And it's the part where, I don't know if you remember all the characters, where Jerry's football player client, Rod, gets offered this crappy football deal. And You'll see in that clip how Rod's wife handles it, how he handles the situation where, he gets this crappy deal and you can visibly tell he feels crappy about it and he's not too happy. He's kind of sad, disappointed. So go watch how she reacts in the movie. Now, I don't agree with every word she said and the complete approach to what she did, but it's a really great example of what I'm talking about here. And there's it's like just a great gem in terms of helping you kind of reflect back on your own relationship and how you can kind of apply that to your own love life. So search Jerry Maguire contract negotiation. That's the name of the YouTube video, Jerry Maguire contract negotiation. Watch how the wife reacts in the movie and let that sink in. Let that sink in. I realize, like I said, it's a movie, but it's a great example.